I agreed to let my sister-in-law throw her baby shower at my house, but when she told me to leave, I smiled. She had no idea what was coming. It started off as a kind gesture, something I didn't think twice about. Amanda was 8 months pregnant and glowing, and when she said she didn't want to rent an expensive venue for her shower, I offered my house immediately. I live alone most of the time. My husband works out of town and only visits on weekends, so the idea of a lively day with family and friends actually excited me. I spent days planning the food and the decorations and even cleared out my schedule just to help her feel special. But on the day of the shower, moments before the first guest arrived, Amanda turned to me and asked, "So, where are you going to be during all this?" At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed and looked around, my living room, my kitchen, my home, but her face didn't move, not even a smirk. "This is really for close friends and family," she said flatly. "I just assumed you understood." My stomach dropped. The anger didn't hit me right away. It was confusion at first, then disbelief, then something else, calm. I knew then that she had underestimated me. Amanda and I were never close, but we were never enemies either. She married my husband's younger brother, Dylan, 2 years ago. At family gatherings, we'd exchange polite smiles and make small talk about work or holiday plans, nothing deep. But when she got pregnant, I found myself wanting to be more involved and more supportive. I'd never had siblings growing up, and somehow I thought maybe this was my chance to finally have a sister. When she first told me she was expecting, I brought over a basket of vitamins, snacks, and a handwritten note. She was touched, maybe even surprised. Over the next few months, I'd text her to check in, send her articles about newborn care, and ask if she needed anything. She didn't always reply quickly, but when she did, she was appreciative. That gave me hope. Matt, my husband, and I had bought this house only 6 months ago. It was a dream come true. We'd scrimped and saved, and when we finally closed the deal, I felt like I'd stepped into the life we'd always talked about during our long drives. The house was airy, filled with natural light, and had this warm, open kitchen where I imagined hosting dinners, holidays, baby showers even. Funny how that turned out. When Matt had to take a long-term assignment out of town, he was devastated to leave so soon after moving in. I told him not to worry, I'd take care of things. And I did. I painted walls, unpacked boxes, turned corners into cozy reading spots, and planted herbs on the balcony. It became my sanctuary. So when Amanda asked to host her baby shower here, I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I said, "whatever you need." Looking back, maybe I was trying to prove something to her, to Matt's family, maybe even to myself, that I could be trusted, that I was a good wife, a generous host, someone people could count on. She told me her apartment was too cramped and that mine was so beautiful it looks like it's straight out of a magazine. I blushed at the compliment. I had worked so hard to make this place feel like home, and it felt good to have that effort recognized. Over the next couple of weeks, Amanda began coming over more frequently to plan. We picked out flower arrangements, discussed menus, and even ordered pastel bunting together. She seemed happy to have my help, almost like we were bonding. I started to feel excited about the event. I imagined the two of us standing by the snack table, laughing with guests, her thanking me in front of everyone. There was one odd thing, though. She never once mentioned me being part of the actual guest list. I hadn't received an invite, not even digitally, but I shrugged it off. I figured she didn't think I needed one. After all, it was my house. A few times, she mentioned keeping the guest list small and intimate. I nodded, thinking that made sense. COVID had made everyone more cautious. When she rattled off the names of her friends, I assumed I'd be included in the family group. I didn't press. I didn't want to come off as needy or make things about me. This was her time, her baby, her celebration. Matt would occasionally ask how things were going, and I'd tell him it was fine. "It's kind of nice having people around," I'd say, and I meant it. The house didn't feel so empty anymore. I cleared out the living room, moved furniture, and rented extra chairs. I paid for cleaning services and offered to cover part of the catering. She refused politely, saying they'd take care of the food, but I still stocked the fridge with drinks and snacks, just in case. The night before the shower, I stayed up until 1 a.m. steaming linens and making sure the bathroom had fresh towels and hand lotion. I even bought her a gift, a handmade baby blanket from a boutique in town. It was expensive, but soft as a cloud and embroidered with the baby's initials. I wanted everything to be perfect for her, for the baby, for us. But none of that mattered in the end, and I didn't know it yet, but Amanda had plans that didn't include me. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. It started small. Amanda began referring to my home as if it were hers. "Your kitchen gets so much light," she said once. "It'll be perfect for our little brunch setup," I remember laughing, not really processing the way she'd slipped that word, "our," into the sentence. But it kept happening. "This hallway's great for guest photos. We'll put the dessert cart by the stairs. Guests love a reveal." "Oh, I already told my friend Lindsay that this bathroom has the best natural lighting for selfies." Every little comment like that brushed past me like a feather. Light, barely noticeable, but after a while, they started to sting. A few days before the shower, she texted me a photo of the cake. It had the words, "Welcome to Amanda's home," piped in gold cursive. I blinked. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a minute. I wanted to ask her what it meant. Why did it say Amanda's home? But I deleted the draft and said, "Looks cute," instead. That same week, while running errands, I bumped into her coworker at a florist. "You're Lauren, right?" she asked. "Amanda told us all about her gorgeous new place. I can't wait to see it this weekend." I smiled, but my heart sank. I didn't correct her. I just let the words fall like bricks into my stomach. Then came the requests. At first, Amanda asked if I could help organize chairs and prep food. I was happy too. But soon, her language shifted. "Make sure the linens are steamed. Don't forget to light those vanilla candles before guests arrive. Also, can you move that ugly armchair out of the living room?" She never said please. She never asked if I wanted to do anything. She assumed I'd just obey. One day, I overheard her on a FaceTime call while I was upstairs. I only caught parts of the conversation until I heard her say, "This is the master suite. Yeah, it's ours. And the closet is massive." Ours. I stepped down halfway through the stairs, just in time to hear her describe the house as if it belonged to her and Dylan. "We've really got lucky with this neighborhood. It's so peaceful." I stood there, stunned. She turned and saw me, didn't flinch. "Oh, hey, just showing Mia around. She might host a bridal thing here someday." Host? Here? It suddenly hit me that I wasn't being helpful, I was being used. But even then, I told myself, let it go. It's her big day. Don't make this about you. I didn't realize it had never been about me. That was the problem. The night before the shower, she left me a thank you note. "Couldn't have done this without you," it read. A signature, no warmth, just a bottle of rosé and a note that felt more like a receipt. And then the final straw. The morning of the event, I was laying out the last of the cutlery when Amanda arrived. She looked around, pleased, then turned to me and said, "So, where will you be during the shower?" I blinked. "Here?" Her smile faded. "Oh, I thought you'd be gone. It's kind of a family thing. Just really tight-knit. You understand, right?" No, I there, didn't. Not then, not ever. But I nodded. My heart cracked quietly in my chest, and I excused myself to the backyard. The sun was shining, the wind was gentle, and for the first time since she walked into my home with that fake smile and pastel color palette, I felt something solid forming inside me. Resolve. Stayed out in the backyard for nearly 15 minutes, pacing under the maple tree Matt and I planted last fall. The same tree we said we'd hang lights on for our first Christmas. My hands trembled, not with rage, but with something colder, like realization, like betrayal, the kind that sneaks up on you, not with a bang, but with a quiet ache. I texted Matt, no reply. He was probably in meetings. I thought about calling a friend, but I didn't want to explain everything yet. This was too bizarre, too humiliating. I wasn't kicked out of a party. I was being erased from my own life, and I didn't know how to process that. I walked back inside to grab my phone charger and saw Amanda fluffing pillows like she owned the place. Her voice carried through the hall. "Remember to keep the guest list limited at first," she told someone on the phone. "People are already under the impression it's our new place. It's cleaner and more elegant than my old apartment, and Dylan's parents love the story." The story. That was what this was to her. A story to tell. One where she got to be the successful, radiant mom-to-be in a picture-perfect house. Never mind whose life she had to step over to sell that fantasy. I went back outside, sat on the garden bench, and stared at the grass. That's when I knew I couldn't stay quiet. Not this time. When Dylan pulled up in his car, Amanda froze. She hadn't expected him, certainly not early, and definitely not looking that serious. I had only messaged him once, unsure if he'd even respond. All I'd said was, "Hey, I know this is awkward, but Amanda just told me I'm not allowed in the shower. Uh, I'm in the backyard of my own home right now. Please help." That was it. No drama, no details, but he showed up anyway. He stepped into the foyer, and the look on Amanda's face said everything. Panic. She moved quickly toward him. "Babe, what are you doing here?" she said, her voice shrill and bright. "Didn't I tell you I had everything under control?" "Yeah," he said flatly. "But Lauren just told me she wasn't allowed to be at the party in her own home. I figured I'd check in." She laughed nervously. "Oh, that's just a misunderstanding. I thought she wanted to be alone today. Let us take over. She's been so busy lately." And Dylan turned to me. "Is that true?" I didn't speak right away. I was still standing at the bottom of the stairs, phone in hand. Amanda's face was pale now, her fingers clenched around the edge of the countertop. "No," I said quietly. "She told me to leave because I wasn't on the guest list, that this was for close friends and family only, that I didn't make the cut." The silence that followed felt like glass cracking under weight. Dylan exhaled. He looked at his wife for a long time, then said, "You're seriously telling people this is your house?" Amanda's eyes widened. "What? No, of course not. I wanted to make it look nicer, more polished. You know how my apartment is, small, and this place photographs better. I thought it'd be harmless, just for the party." "But you told people you lived here." His voice was even now cold. "Mia said you gave her a tour of your kitchen and our bedroom. Your cousin thought we moved, and you tried to kick out the actual homeowner so your lie would look real." Amanda looked like she might cry. "It wasn't a lie. It was just an image. I wanted things to look perfect. For one day." "For one day," he repeated. "You were willing to humiliate Lauren and lie to everyone we know for one day?" She turned to me, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought you understood." "I understood you wanted to pretend," I said. I just didn't know I was being erased in the process." More silence, the front doorbell rang. "Guests." Amanda looked like she was about to fall apart, but Dylan stepped toward the door. "Let's not make a scene," he said. "You'll smile, host, do your thing, but Lauren stays. And after this, we talk." Amanda's mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood to the side as the door opened and a stream of pastel-dressed guests floated in, compliments flying, hugs exchanged. Amanda straightened her shoulders and slipped on the version of herself they all expected. But her eyes didn't meet mine, not once. I stayed, not because I wanted revenge, but because I deserved to be there. I had planned this. I had hosted this. I had been kind. Too kind, maybe. People complimented the house, and Amanda always responded with vague nods and half smiles. She never once corrected them. Dylan stayed close to me for most of the event, not obviously, but enough that I noticed. He helped refill drinks, handed out napkins, and made small talk with anyone who cornered me awkwardly. It felt surreal, like watching a play from backstage, knowing all the lines were fake. After the last guest left, Amanda disappeared into the guest room. Dylan apologized again. "I had no idea. He said. It's okay, I replied. I didn't either. Until it wasn't. Then he said the thing that would echo in my head for days. She's been doing this for a while, trying to be someone else. I let it slide too long. He left that night, suitcase in hand. Amanda didn't say goodbye. After Dylan left, the house felt hollow. Amanda stayed locked in the guest room. I could hear her crying once, briefly, before silence took over. I didn't go to her, not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to say. Whatever version of her I thought I knew had vanished somewhere between the lies and the gold-lettered cake. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking, not violently, but just enough to spill a few drops on the counter. The scent of lavender and vanilla still lingered in the air. Candles I had lit to create warmth, to make guests feel welcome. Irony never burned so clean. I sat on the edge of the couch, surrounded by pastel tissue paper and ribbon scraps. One of the gift bags still had the tag on it, "To Amanda, with love." I stared at it until my vision blurred. Why had I tried so hard? I'd bent over backward to make her feel special, and the reward? Erasure, humiliation, a slow dismissal masked as politeness. I grabbed my phone and saw a missed call from Matt. I didn't feel ready to talk, not yet. Instead, I walked through each room, my home, and slowly began reclaiming it. I peeled off the custom signage, boxed up leftover favors, and wiped down the counters that had held food for guests I barely knew. Every swipe of a cloth felt like a quiet, personal ritual, like I was scrubbing away something I hadn't consented to. When I entered the guest bathroom, I paused. The mirror still had lipstick marks and fingerprints. Someone had written "Glam Mom" in pink eyeliner across the glass. I stared at the writing. Then, without a second thought, I turned on the faucet, soaked a towel, and erased it. By the time the house was clean again, the sun had dipped below the trees. The maple in the backyard cast long shadows on the lawn. I stood there, watching the light fade, thinking about Dylan's words. She's been doing this for a while. It wasn't just about me, this was a pattern, one that had finally cracked under its own pressure. Amanda didn't come out that night, and when I checked the guest room the next morning, she was gone. No note, no text, just silence. But I wasn't surprised. For once, I wasn't surprised at all. The morning after the baby shower, I woke up to a half-empty house and a dozen missed calls from numbers I recognized all too well. Matt's parents, Amanda's mother, and even one of her cousins. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I walked around the house in silence, the kind that presses in on your skin like fog. The dining room table still had glitter from the mom-to-be banner. The trash smelled faintly of cupcakes and disappointment. I made myself a coffee, but the taste was off, bitter. My stomach churned. I didn't feel like eating. I opened my phone and saw a new message from Amanda's mom. "You've really hurt this family. Amanda is devastated. What you did to her, during her pregnancy no less, is something we won't forget." Something I did? My throat tightened. I sat down at the kitchen island and reread it. Then again, and again. Each time the same sentence screamed louder. It didn't matter that I had opened my home, planned the event, and cleaned every surface until it sparkled. None of that counted, not to them, because I had refused to be invisible. That afternoon, Matt finally called. I picked up, my voice flat. "Hey." He knew something was off right away. "They're calling me too," he said. "My mom said you embarrassed Amanda, that you escalated things." I scoffed. "Did they tell you she asked me to leave my own house? That she told people this place was hers? That she tried to erase me from the picture entirely?" Matt sighed. "They didn't. But I believe you." That was something. And yet, it didn't fix the growing ache in my chest. By sunset, I had read at least a dozen versions of the same guilt-tripping message. The baby, the pregnancy, the timing. It was all twisted into a weapon. The narrative was shifting quickly, and I was the villain in it. Amanda still hadn't reached out, not even a half-baked apology. Later that evening, Dylan texted, "I've moved back in with my parents. I need space. Thank you for being honest." I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. Relieved, vindicated, maybe, but also numb. This wasn't the outcome I had wanted. I never wanted to break a marriage. I never wanted to be caught in the middle of someone else's lie. But here I was. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the slow hum that usually lulled me to sleep. Not tonight. My mind spun in circles. I thought about every small thing I had ignored, every time I had swallowed discomfort to keep the peace. I'd made myself so small for them, and still it wasn't enough. I thought about packing a bag and driving to my parents' house just to get away, but I didn't want to run, not again. I needed to feel what I was feeling. I needed to sit with the hurt and let it breathe. I journaled for the first time in years, scribbling furiously into the margins, not caring if the ink bled through. My handwriting turned jagged as I wrote things I'd been afraid to say out loud. I'm not the bad guy. I didn't deserve this. She used me. They let her. I fell asleep sometime after midnight, pen still in hand, the notebook splayed open beside me. The next morning, I woke up feeling raw but lighter. That's when I decided I wasn't going to keep playing their version of the story. I had my own voice, and for once I was ready to use it. I spent the rest of the day offline, no calls, no texts. I turned off notifications, shut the laptop, and sat outside with a blanket and a mug of tea, watching the breeze move through the leaves like nothing in the world had changed, except everything had. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes after emotional betrayal. Not the tiredness that sleep cures, but the kind that makes your bones ache, your voice quieter. I didn't feel like fighting, but I also didn't feel like folding. I scrolled back through old photos on my phone, pictures of Matt and me painting the living room, Amanda and Dylan holding a sonogram, and even selfies Amanda and I had taken while test sampling cupcakes. It made me angry, but also deeply sad, how quickly something that once felt warm could turn to ash. I wondered if Amanda ever saw me as family, or if I had only ever been convenient. The worst part of betrayal is not knowing where the fake ended and the real began. Around 9 p.m., I heard the mailbox clink. I went outside and found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Amanda's cousin. It said, "I don't agree with how Amanda handled things. I'm sorry for what you went through. Just wanted you to know, not everyone's buying her version." I didn't cry, but something in my chest cracked open, just a little. A small kindness. A thread of validation, enough to keep going. That night, I opened my journal again and wrote only one sentence. I am allowed to take up space. And I meant it. Healing didn't come in a straight line. It came in quiet waves, folding laundry without crying, making coffee without feeling bitter, going a whole day without replaying that moment at the baby shower over and over again. Matt came home that weekend. We didn't go to his parents' house. We didn't talk about Amanda until the second night when we were sitting on the back patio under the string lights. I'd finally gotten around to hanging. "She hasn't reached out to me either," he said. "My mom thinks we should all move on for the baby's sake, but they don't get it." I nodded. "It's not about a party. It's about being told you don't belong in your own space, in your own family." He reached over and took my hand. "I hate that you went through that, and I hate that I wasn't here." I didn't cry, just let the warmth of his hand remind me I wasn't alone. That Monday, I took a small step. I blocked Amanda on social media, not out of spite, but to clear the noise. Her curated version of life wasn't mine to absorb anymore. Then I did something unexpected. I started writing again, not in my journal, but publicly, I posted a short reflection on a blog I'd abandoned years ago about boundaries, self-respect, and the quiet strength it takes to stand your ground when no one else backs you up. I didn't name names, I didn't vent, I just told the truth the way I lived it. The post got shared. A lot. People messaged me privately to say they'd been through similar things, being taken advantage of, gaslit, erased in their own families. Each message felt like a drop of water on scorched earth. I wasn't the only one. Then something even more unexpected happened. Dylan called. It had been almost 2 weeks since the baby shower. He sounded tired, but clearer than I'd ever heard him. I just wanted to say thank you, he began. You didn't just protect your space. You held up a mirror I couldn't avoid anymore. We spoke for nearly an hour. He told me that Amanda had been fabricating little things for years, exaggerating, posturing, pretending. He thought it was harmless at first, maybe even understandable, but it grew, and so did the lies. And with the baby coming, he couldn't allow the illusion to become their reality. She's in denial, he said. She thinks I'm punishing her, but really, I just need clarity. I'm sorry, I told him. I never wanted to make things worse. You didn't, he said. You were the only one who didn't let it slide. That conversation lit something in me. I started saying no more often. No to dinners with people who dismissed me. No to guilt-tripped calls from Matt's relatives. No to walking on eggshells. Instead, I said yes to small joys. Yes to repainting the guest room in a warm terracotta color that felt like closure. Yes to Sunday hikes with friends I hadn't seen in months. Yes to rearranging the kitchen, not for entertaining, but for me. Bit by bit, the house stopped feeling like a battlefield. It felt like mine again. One afternoon, Matt walked into the kitchen and found me dancing barefoot to a 90s playlist while making lasagna. You look like yourself again, he said. I think I am, I replied. That night, I lit a candle, opened my journal, and wrote one line. I didn't break, I built. And for the first time in weeks, I slept all the way through the night. A week later, I signed up for a local storytelling event at the library. I didn't plan to share anything from this situation, but I knew I needed to use my voice again, out loud, not behind screens or journals. The theme was taking back control. I smiled when I saw it. When I stood at the mic that night, I felt my hands tremble a little, but my voice didn't waver. I told a story not just of betrayal, but of reclaiming space, of the invisible lines we let others draw for us, and the power in redrawing them. People clapped. A few came up to talk to me afterward. One woman said, I felt like you were telling my story. That was all I needed to hear. Healing didn't mean I forgot what happened. It meant I could remember it without flinching. Without shame, without wondering if I deserved it. It meant that when Amanda's name popped up in conversations, I no longer felt the need to explain, defend, or justify myself. I simply changed the subject and smiled. I had already chosen peace. It's strange how dignity, once reclaimed, changes everything, even silence. By the third week, Amanda tried to contact me again. She sent a message to her mother, then a second one through one of Matt's cousins. I didn't respond to either. Matt asked if I wanted to talk to her just once. Maybe she wants to apologize. I looked at him and said if she wanted to apologize, she would have done it the night she humiliated me. He nodded. Instead of going backward, I focused on where I was going next. I reached out to a nonprofit in town that worked with women navigating toxic family dynamics. They needed someone to help facilitate a story-sharing workshop. Without overthinking it, I signed up, and 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a circle of strangers, passing around paper and pens, and telling them, your voice matters, and your story deserves space. They believed me, because I believed it too. Amanda's baby was born a month early. I saw it on social media. Someone else had tagged her in a birth announcement. There was no mention of Dylan. Matt and I had already heard from Dylan. he wasn't at the hospital. He wasn't even in town. I'll be present for the baby, he told Matt. But I can't pretend with Amanda anymore. She must have been furious, but none of that rage made it to me because I had drawn a line so clear that no one could cross it. It felt powerful. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need drama. I needed boundaries, and I had them. One day while grocery shopping, I ran into Amanda's cousin, the same one who'd sent me that quiet, compassionate letter. She smiled warmly. "You look good," she said. "Peace suits you." I thanked her. We chatted briefly, nothing dramatic, but before she left, she said Amanda's starting to realize what she lost. "Not just Dylan, but you too." I shrugged. She never really had me. A few weeks later, I was asked to give a short talk at a women's conference. They had seen one of my blog posts and asked if I'd speak on emotional self-defense in recovering from betrayal. The old me would have said no, but the new me stood in front of 150 women and said, sometimes survival doesn't look like screaming. It looks like choosing yourself over and over until the noise around you can't reach your peace. The room went quiet. Then the applause came. When I left the stage, my hands were shaking, but not with fear, with strength. Later that week, Matt told me his mother had finally stopped pressuring him to bring the family back together. After weeks of watching how I'd handled things with grace, not vengeance, she had quietly backed off. "She still doesn't agree," he said, "but I think she finally respects you." "Respect's all I ever wanted," I told him. I didn't throw a big party. I didn't post any long rants. I didn't expose Amanda to the world, but I did something else. I hosted a small dinner at home, just 6 close friends, people who knew the real me. We laughed. We toasted to hard-earned peace. And for dessert, I brought out a cake with gold lettering. Only this one didn't say "Welcome to Amanda's home." It said "Welcome back, Lauren." And for the first time, the house didn't feel like a set for someone else's story. It felt like mine again. In the weeks that followed, Amanda's silence stretched louder than her lies ever had. There were no new stunts, no manipulative messages, just nothing. It was the kind of nothing that felt deliberate. I learned through Matt that she'd tried to reframe the story to a few extended relatives, that she had been pushed out by everyone and abandoned during a hard time, but for once, no one seemed to rally around her. It turned out people had begun noticing the pattern long before I ever said a word. I was just the first to say it out loud. I started hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in years, former friends, old coworkers, telling me how proud they were that I stood up for myself. One message read, "You don't know how many of us needed to see someone walk away with grace." I hadn't realized it at the time, but walking away was the most powerful thing I could have done. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I simply said, "No more." And I meant it. One day while cleaning out my phone, I came across the original message I had sent Dylan. The one where I'd simply asked for help standing in my backyard with nowhere to go. I almost deleted it, but then I saved it in a folder called Proof of Strength, because it was not just of what I'd survived, but of what I'd built since. Sometimes the classiest clapback is silence and living well. So that's what I did. I lived. A few nights ago, Matt and I were watching a rerun of our favorite cooking show. He leaned over and said, "I never thought a baby shower would change everything." I laughed softly. Neither did I. But maybe it didn't change everything. Maybe it just revealed what was already broken. He nodded. "Still, I'm glad we're here. Now, so am I. It's been 4 months since the baby shower. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Other times I still flinch when someone rings the doorbell unexpectedly." Amanda never apologized. Dylan eventually moved back into the city, close enough to co-parent but far enough to breathe. From what Matt hears, they're trying, but on parallel tracks. Marriage counseling didn't lead to reconciliation, only civility. I didn't expect closure to be this quiet. No grand confrontations, no teary confessions, just silence, acceptance, and the subtle rebuilding of a self once sidelined. Last weekend, I hosted a small garden brunch for my birthday. Nothing extravagant, just the people who matter. My parents, two close friends, Matt, and one neighbor I've grown to trust. We sat under the patio umbrella, surrounded by potted plants I'd nurtured over the past months. The jasmine was blooming. After everyone left, I stayed outside and watched the light fade through the trees. And I realized I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. The old me would have clung to that fantasy that Amanda would show up one day, teary-eyed, holding a peace offering, that she'd say, "I see it now. I'm sorry I hurt you." But healing isn't about making someone else see your worth. It's about seeing it yourself so clearly, so wholly, that their blindness no longer stings. I thought of all the quiet victories since that day. During the dinner with Dylan, where he admitted, "You were the only honest one in the room." The blog post was picked up by a small publication. The young woman who stopped me after the library event to say, "I left my toxic roommate because of your story." None of that would have happened if I'd played small. If I'd left my own house, like Amanda asked. Matt came outside with 2 glasses of wine. "For the birthday girl," he said, handing me one. We clinked glasses. "To survive," I said. He smiled. "To becoming." And I think that's what this has all been about, not just surviving betrayal, but becoming the kind of person who can hold pain without letting it break her, who can walk through fire and come out softer, not colder. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been shut out, minimized, erased, you deserve to take up space. You deserve to stay in the room, even when they tell you you're not invited, especially then. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Amanda's. Inside was a single page. "I'm not good at apologies," it began, "and I still don't understand everything, but I know I hurt you, and I know that you didn't deserve what I did." There was no request to meet, no plea to repair anything, just a quiet acknowledgement of the damage. I read it 3 times, then folded it and put it in a drawer I don't open often. Not because I needed it close, but because I didn't need it at all. I'd already done the hard work. I had nothing left to prove, not to her, not to anyone. That night, I journaled a single sentence. "Sometimes peace arrives after the storm, not because of it, but in spite of it." The next morning, I took a long walk around the neighborhood. I smiled at familiar faces, waved to kids on bikes, and paused to admire the lavender hedge down the block. This was my life, not perfect, but mine. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was guarding something fragile. I felt like I was standing in something solid. My home, my voice, my place. No one could take that from me again. At the next nonprofit gathering, one of the facilitators pulled me aside. "We're starting a new mentorship program," she said, "and we think you'd be perfect for it." Just didn't hesitate. Sometimes we go through things not just to survive, but to help someone else when they're walking their own tightrope. Heart clenched, voice shaking. That's what I want now. Not revenge, not justice, legacy. The kind that whispers to other women, "You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're not overreacting. You deserve a room that doesn't ask you to shrink." If I can be that voice for even one person, then maybe all this happened for some. Maybe I will become someone I like better in the end. Not because of the pain, but because I didn't let it define me. Because I chose truth, boundaries, and above all, myself. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with quiet choices made over and over in the direction of peace. Mine was one of those stories. If you'd told me months ago that standing up for myself just once would ripple this far, I wouldn't have believed you. I thought my voice was too soft to shift anything. I thought kindness meant staying silent. But silence is not always peace, and not all kindness is selfless. There are costs to disappearing for the comfort of others. The day I refused to leave my own home, something shifted permanently, not just between me and Amanda, but within me. I stopped asking permission to exist. I started choosing myself in rooms where I used to shrink. I started telling the truth, even when it trembled. And little by little, the world around me reshaped, not dramatically, not overnight, but in gentle, undeniable ways. New friendships, stronger boundaries, more restful sleep. My house no longer holds the memory of humiliation. It holds laughter, soft music, and slow mornings. My heart no longer tiptoes around other people's comfort. It beats steady, present, mine. And if you are where I was, questioning your instincts, doubting your right to be upset, let this be your sign. You're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to want more. Not because you're difficult, because you're worthy. Amanda may never understand the damage she did. She may rewrite it, diminish it, dismiss it. That's her story to carry. But I'm done carrying it for her. This is mine, and I'm finally writing the ending myself. Sometimes I catch myself rereading the letter Amanda sent, not to reopen old wounds, but as a quiet reminder that I wasn't crazy. That's what happened, did happen, and someone else finally saw it too. It's not closure, but it's enough. Enough to keep choosing better. Better friendships, better conversations, better versions of myself. I no longer dread family events, not because Amanda won't be there, she still might be, but because her presence no longer dictates mine. I show up where I want to, I stay if I'm welcome, I leave if I'm not. It sounds simple, but it took a long, hard journey to earn that kind of ease. I don't look back with bitterness. I look back with clarity. Amanda didn't steal something from me. She exposed something in me that needed protecting: my voice, my dignity, my ability to say enough. And for that, strangely, I'm grateful. This isn't the ending I expected. It's quieter, steadier, less dramatic, but it's mine, and it's just the beginning. Because sometimes healing isn't loud. It's not a grand gesture or a viral post. Sometimes healing is a quiet Sunday morning, coffee in hand, no apologies owed, no explanations given, is waking up and realizing, for the first time in a long time, you're not waiting for anyone else to fix what they broke. You're building something stronger, right where the cracks used to be, and that's enough.